You're doing an interview with a family member, and in particular ones that have found their family members murdered like this. I mean, you got to be sympathetic to them.
At the same time, police need to make sure Reggie Weeks Jr. has himself one good alibi.
He was the last one to see her that morning, and he was the first one to find her that afternoon when she was deceased. We need to get details from him on his whereabouts.
And his whereabouts are certainly detailed.
Reggie Weeks Jr. told us that his day started at about 7, and he left home. He told us that he went to a job site on Bourbon Street.
And then he proceeded to a home on Pinewood Avenue in Salisbury, where he repaired some sheetrock in a bathroom.
At that point, he went to a mechanic shop and then had one final errand.
Reggie Weeks had told us that he was supposed to meet with a woman sometime after 4 o'clock that afternoon for a job that she was wanting done.
To get ready for the job, Reggie Jr. met with his dad and owner of the company, Reggie Sr.
They drove back to his home located on Scale Street to pick up some proposal papers to go meet with this lady about doing some work at her home.
He said that he went inside of his house, went to where the proposal papers were, saw that the drawers in the computer stand were ajar, and he thought that was odd.
Odd because their modest home is usually neat and tidy.
So he called her name.
Brittany!
She didn't answer, opened the door, and saw Brittany laying on the bed. So he went into the room and tried to wake Brittany up. He told us that he saw a hole in her neck, and he grabbed and held her.
Reggie starts screaming, and his dad hears the screams from outside and comes running into the home.
It's an upsetting story to recount. And the details of Reggie Jr.'s alibi still have to check out. Meanwhile, Brittany's mother Tina's alibi is less complicated.
Her day consisted of going to work and staying at work until about 4 when she returned home.
It looks like Brittany's parents are on the up and up.
Mr. Weeks told us that he was willing to do whatever necessary to help us in the investigation, to include taking a polygraph.
And the police might just take him up on that offer. But for now, they need to know if Reggie or Tina knew of anyone that might be capable of harming Brittany.
We asked Reggie Weeks who he thought could do this, and he didn't have a person who he knew that would do something like this.
Well, police just might have someone in mind. Brittany's biological father, Roderick Loritz. But it doesn't take long before he too is cleared off the suspect list.
We learned that Roderick Loritz, Brittany's biological father, was in fact out of town at the time of Brittany's death.
Still, Brittany's father wants investigators to be 100% sure.
I even wanted them to put me on a lie detector test. You know, just in case they didn't believe what I was saying. I was that dedicated into finding out what happened to my daughter.
With family members questioned and freed to go, investigators revisit the robbery gone wrong theory. Perhaps a neighbor might have caught a glimpse of something suspicious.
Well, anytime we have a homicide such as this, we always do a neighborhood canvass of the area to see if anyone had saw something unusual going on through the day that could lead us to maybe who had done this to Brittany Loritz.
And at first, the canvass turns up a promising lead.
There were some neighbors who told us that they saw a man running in between houses.
Promising, except for the fact that no one got a good look at this stranger. And if this was a home invasion gone wrong, perhaps there are other similar crimes in the area that can offer a little insight.
We searched just within the city limits of Salisbury in that general area, but there were no larcenies, no home burglaries, or even businesses in the area that had reported any crimes or there was no even assaults reported.
Maybe investigators are barking up the wrong tree.
We didn't know what happened. It could have been a family member, it could have been a random situation, it could have been a friend. We just didn't know.
And the autopsy results are about to reveal a surprising twist, leaving investigators to question everything they think they know about this case. The lazy days of summer in Salisbury, North Carolina are usually spent basking in the afternoon sun or taking shelter from the heat at the local ice cream parlor. But in 2005, the seemingly random murder of 18-year-old Brittany Loritz in her Scales Street home has left residents in a haze.
That neighborhood is a very quiet neighborhood. In my years of covering crime, I never had been on that street for anything, not even minor offenses. People in the neighborhood were frightened. One lady told me that she was going to nail her windows shut. Who did this? How could this happen? That's what people wanted to know.
And no one more than Brittany's half-sister, s02e Loritz. Although the two sisters lived apart, they were thick as thieves.
Every morning before I talked to anybody else, I was talking to my sister. Every night before I went to sleep, I was talking to my sister. Brittany was my life.
s02e was just 5 days shy of her 15th birthday when her big sister was murdered.
She was my best friend, so it was pretty devastating when we lost her. In the blink of an eye, my life it changed completely.
Now, it's up to police to give this grieving family closure, and Special Agent Holmes is taking this one personally.
I can't imagine what something like this would be like to a family, having a loved one die in such a manner.
And the manner of death becomes even more disturbing when Brittany's preliminary autopsy report comes back.
It appeared that Brittany had been strangled first with the coat hanger and knocked unconscious, but that didn't kill her. What killed her was a stab wound. It was a deep, lethal stab wound.
And that's not the only thing investigators learned from the autopsy.
At the time Brittany's body was found, there was no evidence or signs of any sexual assault.
But a closer look reveals something else.
The medical report also revealed that on Brittany's genitalia, there was an abrasion. That told us that there was some kind of sex that occurred prior to her dying.
Brittany's murder just might be sexually motivated after all. But things aren't always as they seem.
The medical examiner said that this abrasion could have happened from consensual sex.
And there's something else that may support this theory. There were no signs of struggle on Brittany's body or in her bedroom.
The lack of the defensive wounds tells us that she could have known the person.
A DNA sample may be all investigators need to close this case. Except there is no DNA.
There was no semen detected.
The killer may have worn protection.
The fact that a suspect would go through the trouble of using a condom shows that there was an intent there, at least, to have sex.
But why redress her? Brittany's body was found fully clothed.
That would tell you that is somebody very familiar with Brittany and that cared about Brittany to go to the trouble to reclothe her.
Maybe, just maybe, investigators have been looking at this murder all wrong.
This could have been someone she had let into the home and had consensual sex with, some kinky type sex with on strangulation part, and passed out, and whoever was having sex with her could have just gotten scared.
Scared that he may have accidentally murdered her.
They didn't know how to report this crime. They freaked out, and just to cover some tracks or something, stabbed her.
Then staged the crime scene to look like a robbery gone wrong. It's a long shot, but at this point, anything is possible.
When there's no forced entry and you have drawers pulled out within the home and none of it's dumped on the floor, that this was a red flag to me that this was a staged crime to cover up something else.
Investigators need to find out all they can about the teenager's love life. And there's no better person to ask than Brittany's sister, s02e Loritz.
We spoke to Brittany's sister about a week or two into the investigation. s02e told us that she had a good relationship with her sister, that they talked often.
And s02e provides police with information about Brittany's current boyfriend, a young man named Terry Biddle.
Brittany was crazy about Terry. She talked about him all the time, and everything about Terry was just perfect, perfect, perfect.
Maybe too perfect.
We thought that it was possible that he was responsible for killing Brittany.
Perhaps Terry had swung by the Scale Street home that Monday, and things got out of hand. But there's only one way to know for sure.
We located Terry. He came to the police department, and he immediately cooperated.
Investigators start the interview with the basics. What was your relationship like with Brittany? When was the last time you saw her? Oh, and can you account for your whereabouts the day your girlfriend was murdered?
Terry told us that he had been seeing Brittany for several months at the time of her death, that he hadn't seen Brittany for about 2 weeks because Brittany and her family had been on vacation.
It sounds fine and good, but can he prove it?
Terry gave us his whereabouts on that Monday on the 11th, which we were able to corroborate.
Terry was cleared and eliminated by law enforcement.
Terry, like everyone else, is all torn up over Brittany's murder. Still, investigators aren't quite ready to give up on the idea that one of Brittany's old flames might also be her killer. Especially when about 2 weeks in, police learn some troubling information from Brittany's mother.
While speaking with Tina Weeks, we learned of an abortion that Brittany Loretz had some 5 years prior to her death.
When pressed further, Brittany's mother shuts down. It's obviously an emotional topic.
We asked Tina if she knew who the father was. She said no.
Tina's not talking. But the town gossips have plenty to say. According to the rumor mill, it might have been Brittany's old boyfriend, a local troublemaker named Jerome Buckler.
We had received information of an old boyfriend that Brittany had some dealings with several years ago, an older boyfriend who had a little bit of a criminal history at the time, not the best of character in the world.
Turns out, Brittany's family wasn't all that fond of Buckler either.
Reggie did tell us that he'd really had some problems out of the older boyfriend some years ago. He thought maybe that was the direction we need to go because he had seen this guy walking up and down the road recently.
He has his criminal record. It's just prudent that we speak to him as soon as possible.
But when police question him, Jerome's tough guy persona begins to crumble.
He was upset. He cried.
He wasn't nervous like he was involved in this crime.
Jerome's emotions seem genuine. To be sure, police ask him to prove it.
He was willing to take a polygraph. We also asked if he would consent to hair samples and perhaps blood samples, which he did voluntarily.
Looks like Jerome Buckler won't be adding a murder charge to his rap sheet. All of Brittany's old flames are quickly eliminated. And her quiet social life doesn't offer much insight to detectives either.
There was no indication that she was running with the wrong crowd or involved in any type of illegal drugs or anything.
Brittany's friends kind of described Brittany as being quiet, as a peacemaker.
She was just a homebody and stayed at home and never bothered a soul.
So who would want this innocent girl dead? Investigators feel there's still one person with some explaining to do. And what he has to say will rocket him to the top of the suspect list. Get more Nightmare Next Door online at investigation.discovery.com. The good folks of Salisbury, North Carolina, are devout people who live by the lessons of the good book. So when several weeks pass with no arrests in the murder of Brittany Loretz, they all start praying a little harder.
Salisbury is definitely a church-going community. We are in the Bible Belt, and it's a big part of the fabric of life here. There are 250 churches in this county.
And it's in one of those churches that Reggie Weeks Jr. and his family worship nearly 7 days a week.
People referred to Mr. Weeks Jr. as a deacon. That told me how involved in the church he was. Most people had a very positive impression of Reggie Weeks himself.
Which is why police find it strange when days into the investigation, Reggie still hasn't made